Welcome to the State of Women in Washington panel. My name is Brittany Gregory. I'm the Executive Director for the Washington State Women's Commission, and I'll be your moderator today. Turning over to our lovely panelists, let's learn a little bit more about you. Can you tell us your name, role, where you live and work, something you love about your life right now, and what brings you here today?
Yeah, thank you, Brittany, for having us. I am Tarra Simmons. I'm a state representative. I represent the 23rd Legislative District, which is Bremerton, Bainbridge Island, and Paulsbo, and parts of unincorporated Kitsap County. What was the other question? Let's see. My role. I'm also an attorney.
Something you love about your life.
I'm also a dog mom, so that can be both, right? I love that too. Something I love about my life right now is I've really started growing my private practice as a lawyer in the interims, and became a partner at a law firm, and am doing that. And what brings me here today? Well, I was invited by these wonderful people. I think, I hope to bring an intersectional lens of being a woman, being mixed race, being from poverty, but also one of the things I'm known for is being the first formerly incarcerated legislator in our nation. And I think I bring that lens where other people can't. So.
Thank you, Anabase. My name is Kady Titus. I'm Koyukon Athabaskan from Alaska. I currently live and work in Tri-Cities, Washington. Eastern Washington, folks, give me a hand. I work for an energy developer. I work in the intersection of tribal relations and energy development here in Washington State. I'm a community organizer at heart, and I'm the first Indigenous woman to be appointed to the Governor's Board for Community Colleges and Technical Schools. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. And I'm here today to give a kind of perspective from the tribal lens and also Eastern Washington. And right now I am enjoying in life I just moved to Tri-Cities, so this is my first time living in a big city. And I'm very excited and been enjoying DoorDash. So life is nice on the other side.
Hello, my name is Caedmon, and I am the director of the Policy Advocacy Department at the ACLU of Washington. And some of our biggest policy areas right now are tech policy, smart justice, healthcare policy. So I lead a real rock star team that are working to advance protections for civil liberties and civil rights. Something that gives me happiness right now is that when I was growing up, I really had a derogatory view of soccer moms. Like, they were not something to live up to dream about. And now I have two kids who are 14 and 11, and they are obsessed about soccer, and I spend a lot of time watching them play soccer. And I will say that their soccer games are the only time in my whole week where I can't multitask. I have to be present. I'm just there. I'm not scrolling. I'm not doing other work. I'm not cleaning. And it's like that presence in that moment has been such a gift. So really want to be an advertiser for other sports moms out there. And I live in Seattle. I live in West Seattle. Yeah.
Awesome. That sounds great, doesn't it? Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Cheri, Kilty. I'm the CEO for the Yakima YWCA. Many of you might know our mission is to eliminate racism and empower women. So you can imagine what a wonderful time we're having with that right now. And something that brings me joy actually is being in spaces like this with all you brilliant women. And I love seeing the people that I work with in my community growing and stepping into their own leadership positions, because I love, connecting people. And what else? This is the 5th YWCA I've worked with over the years. And I have been in Yakima 8 years now. And I've lived in other places around Washington State. I've been in Bellingham, Seattle, Kirkland, Bellevue.
All over.
All over.
Great. And so one of the things as the executive director for the Women's Commission, people will always ask me, how are women doing in Washington? And to put it simply, we're down bad. But there is always hope. I always tell people we are not a monolith, although we are connected by the fact that we are women. How Black women experience Washington is different than how rural women experience Washington, and so forth. Over the years, we have seen fewer women in high-wage industries and in top-level executive roles, and we all know that women in Washington make less than their male counterparts. The first question I have for the panel is, what barriers do you think most affect women in Washington today? And Caedmon, let's start with you.
So I shared that I'm coming from the ACLU of Washington, and I just want to ground us in the fact that we are in an authoritarian regime, and our democracy is backsliding. That is not something that's happening in the future, it is happening now. And so I think other folks may talk about like the barriers that we have faced since then, because there certainly are some, but I want to point out there are barriers to come, there are threats to come that we really need to be organized and getting activated and galvanized to really push back on that threat. And there are two things that I really want to call out with that, is that I think that this administration is really hell-bent on policing our bodies, and they're hell-bent on policing our roles. And one of their biggest and most effective strategies that I've seen so far is trying to divide us, particularly around making it a really good argument that trans women aren't women. And that is the slippery slope and the first step at really policing our bodies into a really, really dangerous place. So it was really important for me as a cis woman in this space to really call out that that is really about letting them define who is a woman and who is not a woman. And that is the first step to, I think, an area that none of us want to go. So I shared earlier that I am also a soccer mom to two girls. And I will say that their interest in girls' sports is insincere. This is not about a girls' sports issue. This is not about fairness and play equity. This is about policing our bodies. So I think as women, we need to first be clear that that is a siren call for us to stand up and widen our circle of what it means to be a woman and not let them police us and tell us what it means to be a woman. So that's the first thing. And I also think they're using that as a strategy to really unite and divide so that they can also start policing our roles and where women should and shouldn't be in government, in our home, and in our schools. So I think that's a barrier that is really growing, and that we need to be crystal clear about what our role is. And I know that in Washington, we often feel like we have the legal protections, we have a lot of access. And so I think that is true for many of us, and that with that comes a lot of responsibility. With that privilege for those of us who are able to move freely, who are able to access the healthcare where we need, who are able to be comfortable in our homes, that really makes us responsible to get up and stand up. Because here's the thing, to stop this authoritarian regime and this democracy that is backsliding, we need 3.5% of the population to stand up and get in the streets. 3.5. So those of us who are able to do that and have the privilege, get up, get out. And when you see a call of action, like, take it seriously, because that's the only way this is going to stop.
I love that.
So Kady and Cheri, your work puts you directly in the community. Can you talk a little bit more about how the barriers might be different for women of color or rural women or trans women that Caedmon mentioned? And in your own field or community, what systems or structures most impact women's opportunities?
Yeah, definitely the obvious is access to healthcare, employment opportunities, educational opportunities, and things like that. But in my community, the most important, I feel like, is definitely the violence against Native women and other crises that cannot be ignored. I'm going to get a little emotional because it directly affects my community. I'm sorry. We experience some of the highest rates of domestic violence and the missing and murdered Indigenous women in the country. Yet our jurisdictional complexities and issues between tribal and state and federal government make issues when it comes to our justice. So yes, I understand that so many other things are on the chopping block right now, especially with federal programming and things like that, but this has been an issue in our community for generations now. And we continue to be ignored. And yeah, I'm gonna pass it on to you, so.
Thank you so much. I completely agree. The one thing I think we don't talk enough about that is a huge barrier to women in this state is violence and abuse. And I think that we still feel like that is something we can't say out loud. And I, have lived and worked in a few different communities. And I thought when I came to Yakima, maybe our organization is serving 3,000 or 4,000 people. And we serve 16,000 people in the Yakima Valley that only has 250-some thousand people. So in our community, many of the barriers are really related to people being stuck in an abusive situation, the wages not being what they should be, so women would feel confident that they could go out on their own and create their own family situation somewhere else. And so we're just really dealing with sort of the everyday barriers, like, is there childcare for your children? Do you have access to health care? Thank goodness for our Yakima Neighborhood Health, because they really are a huge partner across the community, and has recently partnered with our medical school, Pacific Northwest University, to develop a dental school, because dental is one of the most basic things that people need in our community. So we're dealing with the same things, I think, at just a more severe level than other places.
So falling through the gaps seems to be a major issue, especially for more marginalized groups of women. Tarra, I want to give you an opportunity to respond as a formerly incarcerated, publicly elected official. What are some of the barriers that you faced?
Yeah, so I was thinking about this, and women are the fastest growing incarcerated population as well. And I think that has a lot to do with some of the laws that were created around like conspiracy and things like that. A lot of women get convicted for crimes that their partners are doing, especially in the federal landscape. You see that a lot, women serving life sentences for drug crimes, and that their partners were actually the seller or something like that. But, and I have often not really understood if it was because I was a woman or because I was poor or because, I came from generational poverty and violence and all of this stuff. But it became very clear to me that it was because I was a woman when I graduated from Seattle University Law School after getting out of prison. And during that time, I graduated magna cum laude. I had, this really prestigious fellowship that nobody had ever gotten before. And I did really well during law school, and also had a record of community service. The governor had appointed me to these boards, and then I went to take the bar exam, and there were several men who had, with more significant criminal history than I had. One of my male mentors had 65 felonies for racketeering and organized crime in the federal level. Another one had robbed 5 banks with a gun, and these men had gotten through the Bar Association character and fitness without a problem. And then they denied me, and it was a split decision, 6-3. And the author noted that I didn't show enough remorse, that I appear to feel entitled to becoming a lawyer. And so there was these words were used, but the victory really came when we went before the Supreme Court and we appealed, the Justice Gordon McLeod, who is the chair of the Gender and Justice Commission, she really laid into them and were like, "What's the?"
And she's scary.
It was so great. And Justice Yu was just going at him. And it was funny because one of the men who had robbed 5 banks became my lawyer and appealed and was arguing at the Supreme Court. And without saying anything, it was just like, okay, let's see. He's arguing on behalf of her. So it became very blatantly obvious. And she's like, what's the difference between, some other people who got admitted and her, except their gender? And it came out in the opinion. So then that's one of the times where I really knew it was because of my gender, not because of my conviction history or my background in other ways. And then I would just say, working as a legislator, I just see that, we are a lot of the women feel, and we talk about this, like we have to work harder and do more just to get like the same kind of recognition or even less still. And so when we talk about kind of like pay equity issues, we might get paid the same, but the amount of hours that I see a lot of the women leaders putting in is just a lot more. So it is less pay.
Yeah. Shout out to the Supreme Court.
Yes,
The Washington
I loved him
State
forever.
Supreme Court.
Yes, the Washington State Supreme Court. Yes.
Gotta specify. We've been talking about pay equity, and the room might be surprised to find that Washington State is the 6th worst when it comes to pay equity. We used to be number 2, so celebrate small wins where you can. But it turns out that the pay increases only come for white and Asian women, and for pay equity, things have gotten worse for Native, Latina women, and Black women as well. On average, women in Washington make $17,000 less a year, and over a 40-year career, that can lead to a loss of over $400,000 if you're a white or Asian woman, and up to $1 million if you're a Black, Native, or Latina woman. And I need all my money. So I'm interested to hear from the panel. Why do you think this gap persists here, even though Washington tends to be fairly progressive and we have protections in place? And what strategies could we use to close it? Tarra, why don't we start with you, since you mentioned pay equity before?
Yeah, I really think, from my experience, like growing up in generational poverty, it's like I didn't have like a good first chance or a foundation. So getting out of poverty has been hard. And I think, the conditions I grew up in, the violence and not having, I'm still at 47 years old learning boundaries and like how to advocate for myself. And that's because, when you're abused so much as a child, it's like you don't know how your boundaries are, not respected, and then it's hard to learn how to do that. And so I still find myself, even this week, and having a negotiation with my law partner about division of labor and, finances. And I'm like, I just have to stop and listen to my spirit and like stand up for myself. So I think it's a cultural issue, really, more than like, I don't know if there's any magic policy that we can do in the legislature to fix this problem. Because like I said, even though I get paid the same on paper, like the amount of hours, the amount I'm thinking of work, the amount I'm obsessed, because I'm also afraid of going back to poverty. I just feel like women carry so much on our shoulders, and society and this culture has created it. And so it's going to take really society and a cultural change to fix it.
Cheri, I'm wondering what you see over at the YWCA, sorry.
Well, one of the things that I see in our area in general is still the occupation segregation, where women really take on certain roles. We do have a lot of women leaders in our community, and I know they are still not respected or maybe given the same access to resources as men do in our community. Also, at our particular YWCA, I have actually raised wages over 30% in the last 8 years of being there. Recognizing, number one, nonprofit workers, we always kind of giggle like, we don't get paid anything. But it's important for us to continue to push forward toward a livable wage, and a wage where people feel like they can get most of their needs met. And it's been an interesting journey, because some of our staff who may have been on public benefits in the past, whether it was childcare, maybe SNAP benefits, something that just kind of helped bridge that gap, now they're not eligible for those, and they still have the same problem. So now that's a new challenge for us to figure out how can we continue to address that. But women, I think, in the rural areas definitely do not have the same even occupation opportunities, or the industries are not coming to our area.
Interesting. And Kady, you are from a rural area, and you've worked to help get women employed. What do you think how we could possibly address the pay equity gap?
Definitely, especially in rural areas that tend to, like, their main form of industry is agriculture or natural resources and things like that. You definitely see a difference in not only wage disparity, but also the opportunities that are even given to women. Most of the time it's seasonal employment or part-time or a non-benefited employment opportunity. So like doesn't have any vacation, doesn't have any family leave time, anything like that. In some of our rural communities though, I have seen like community colleges and tribes be really creative in the development of apprenticeship programs and different kinds of educational programs like that. So definitely look into the local resources around you. But that's just one of the solutions. But definitely we should be looking at having more opportunities for companies to be more transparent in the wages and also the opportunities that they have available and who they're actually hiring within that within the area, because we're also seeing a lot of people coming from different parts of the state to coming over to work those jobs that were originally supposed to be slotted for us that live there. So
yeah. And I will say that, as a society, we should do better about valuing already women-dominated fields. Our teachers and our healthcare workers should be making a lot more. And I think as a state, we focus a lot on STEM, which is wonderful, but not everyone can work in STEM. So something for us to think about. So I always like to, I'm a solution-oriented person, so I'd like to hear from the panel. Can you share a recent example of a solution, policy, or initiative that has made life better for women in Washington? Whoever wants to start.
yeah, I'm just going to put it out there. Washington State Bill 6185, which requires public agencies to share information that could help law enforcement find our missing and murdered Indigenous people. And it was supported by my mentor, Senator Claudia Kaufman. So I'm really excited about that. That's going to change the game in a lot of ways.
I always like to give a shout out for the Washington paid family leave and think there's a lot of opportunity to expand that to help even around our child care issues.
Caedmon?
Sure. I think one thing last session that the ACLU helped work on is expanding our SHIELD law to make sure that folks who are seeking protected healthcare service, which includes abortion services and also gender-affirming care, have increased protections from law enforcement, particularly though in other agencies across the border. So people coming to Washington to seek those cares have greater protections. But with that, I want to again, going back to, I think we have a lot of privileges in this state, particularly around access to abortion care and laws protecting gender-affirming care, but legal access is insufficient and it is not meaningful access. So I think that while we can feel safe and that people can access abortions and gender-affirming care legally, we are going to face a huge uphill battle making sure that these services are actually being provided. There's a lot of providers who feel a lot of fear coming from this federal administration, and that is making it very hard, particularly for young people to access gender-affirming care. So yes, we have so many things to be proud of in this state and so many policy wins, and just like really want to make sure that we are mindful that legal access is nothing without meaningful access, without financial means to access those services.
Awesome.
I want to echo everything that they've said, and I'm so proud of my seatmate. Senator Hansen was the author of the Legal Shield, and I really worked hard to try and Keep Our Care Act, which was, stopping the mergers and consolidations. Because if you have legal access, but then, like in my community, I have one Catholic hospital, and they have authority to choose not to provide some services aligned with their religious beliefs, and so my community is always very afraid that we aren't going to have any gender-affirming care or death with dignity. So we still need to do something around that piece. So we do have access, but just the investments in childcare, I would say, are really. I hear a lot from moms that we passed the capital gains tax. Thank you so much for everyone who was willing to support that and invested it in education and early childhood education and really getting into more childcare access and things like that. But healthcare and childcare, paid family medical leave. But for incarcerated women, I would say one thing we did is create a women's division, because when I was there, like, you don't even get your menstrual, products for free, right? And if you do, it's like a hard thing. And so, the incarcerated women have different needs, but it's all built around men. So even now, incarcerated women are wearing male clothing, and don't have a lot of things that we need that are unique to being a woman. And so we did create a women's division through legislation, and I'm really happy about that.
That's awesome. And Cheri, I have a question for you. We've been talking about childcare access. On average, for a year of childcare for one child is $21,000 here in Washington. For 2 children, it's $40,000. What have you seen in terms of helping women get more affordable, accessible childcare?
Well, I think it's very difficult. In Yakima County, I was reading recently, we have 40,000 children and 20,000 childcare slots. So it's really difficult. And I do think it goes back to a lot of the echoing around partnerships. How can we partner together to try to address some of these issues, and we're not going to be able to continue to rely on the government to solve our problems if any of us have, sort of leaned that way, that this is a time for us to come together. And this is not new in the history of women. We've been coming together since the first woman, I'm sure. And this is really a time where I think the community could come together and figure out childcare co-ops. I don't hear many stories anymore about one woman is staying home and she's taking care of other women's children because that woman needs to go to work. I've worked in some other states where I did know some women who she started her business taking care of other people's children, so because she knew those other friends of hers needed to be out in the workplace, and it helped her too.
That's awesome. Women coming together. So we're going to talk about women leadership in Washington. So we have 147 legislators here in Washington. 67 of those are women, which is about 45%, so not quite half, even though half the state are women. We have 9 statewide elected offices. Only 2 of those are held by women. And in 2024, there were 64 publicly traded companies in Washington. Only 3 had women CEOs. So how do we ensure that women, not just in numbers, but across race, socioeconomic status, rural, urban divides, have real power in shaping systems like justice, the workforce, healthcare, and housing? Kady, why don't we start with you?
Just by events like this, like what we're doing here today, centering the woman's voice, centering each other, supporting each other. In our communities, you see that being represented by leaderships of nonprofits like your organization and different people like that, just supporting the local leaders that they see in their communities. And the work that they're doing, even if it's paid or unpaid or volunteer, like women are naturally community organizers, and we just do it by nature. It's always been a monarch society, whether we want to believe it or not. We're the ones kind of supporting everybody at the bottom ground. So just continuing to do this every day and to continuing to make those opportunities affordable for everybody else. I remember when I was looking for a leadership development program in Eastern Washington, I did find one that was Indigenous led, but I had to drive to Seattle at least once a month. So trying to bring that to our rural communities and to make it more accessible, or to help with those barriers that stop them from achieving that. So like providing gas, childcare, things like that, and coming together and making those more accessible.
That's great. Mentorship is so important. I would not be where I am today without my women mentors.
Absolutely,
So.
yeah.
Tarra, what about you?
Well, I have a lot to say on this. Now that I came from being an advocate, I just got out of prison in 2013, went to law school. It was a whirlwind. And I came from being like an activist advocate to going inside the legislature, and I realized how much power we do have. We don't have as much as, like, say, the governor, but we have a little bit to do some things. We can't pass like a big policy by ourselves, but we can get a little money for certain things, or, there are things that we can do. We can also stop bad things from happening, which a lot of people don't see, and that's the majority of my work, honestly. So I do think that we need to have more women in in politics and in positions of leadership. Now, I'm in the House Democratic Caucus, and we have a majority of women, and we have a speaker that's a woman. And I do see the differences in the leadership style, the collaboration, the trying to flatten a little bit the hierarchy and things like that, and hear more voices and be more inclusive. And that is a leadership style that I think we just need to adopt. I don't care if you're a man or a woman, we just need to adopt that kind of leadership style. Because I will tell you, in the other caucus, there's women who are there also, but they are adopting a different philosophy and maybe not advocating for what I think is women's, right to choose and things like that, right? So there's differences. But one thing I want to say is, as much as we go and find women from diverse backgrounds to get elected, you have to support them. I am the very first, I think, legislator who's had like 30 white supremacists show up on my front yard. Okay, I'm a single woman, and this job, this public service, it is meant for wealthy white men. Because I don't get paid very much doing it. I have to hustle and work other jobs to make ends meet. And then I'm a target. I am targeted so much because of who I am, because I'm the first, and because of the things that I'm fighting for, and that I'm not afraid, and I do speak up, and I share about things that people don't want to hear about. And I have had death threats. I've had the FBI serve a search warrant on an insurrectionist's home where he was sending me death threats. I've had people show up on my front yard, and we need more support. And so I'm finally glad that because of everything that's been going on across the nation, we are going to have a bill this session finally to actually have the House kind of pay for security at my home. I had to pay for all these upgrades in my house and things like that. People don't understand the mental, emotional, and physical safety issues of serving. And this was happening for me far before these times, just because of my unique background. So have to support them too.
Absolutely. Caedmon?
I just thank you for sharing that, because I do think that we do not recognize how much service is involved in being an elected official, and we complain an awful lot about our elected officials and not recognizing and not standing up ourselves to participate in that process. So I just want to acknowledge what you shared, and thank you. Something else that you shared had me thinking about this thing that was once shared with me, and that is we don't need a single man on this planet to have misogyny flourish and thrive. So it really, and going back to Representative Simmons' comment about the legislator can only do so much. We can only do so much structurally to address some of these issues, and the structures are really comprised of individuals. And there are a lot of women in these structures who maintain and support misogyny, and they also maintain and support anti-Blackness. And so for us to really get at the root of some of these issues, it really is calling upon each one of us to really inspect our own misogyny and our own anti-Blackness, and really figure out how are we supporting these structures that we claim to not like. And that takes a lot of effort, and that takes a lot of courage, and that takes a lot of humility, but we're not going anywhere until we do that work. So that's on all of us, particularly those who are a little bit more privileged and a little bit more comfortable, is to really see that that is our responsibility, and it's a daily work to get done. I think I'll stop there.
Yeah. And I will say, your money has so much power. We've seen what happens when women, especially Black women, have done it a lot recently, stop using their money to support certain places or people, how quickly things change. So I would say just be mindful about where you're spending your dollars and how you're choosing to support individuals and companies as well. All right. This one's more aspirational. Cheri, I want to start with you, but what is your vision for the state of women in Washington in the next 3 to 5 years? What would you like to see in terms of legislative, cultural, or systematic change?
Oh my gosh. That's kind of a big question. My greatest wish, which I would love to think could happen in 3 to 5 years, but probably not, is every woman has everything they need to thrive. if we could all work toward that a little bit within ourselves and our neighbors and our friends, and bring our voices to the table, create our own tables, and bring those voices, we could make a lot of change in our community. And I would love to have everybody just have everything they need. I know that's not a very fancy way of putting it.
That's awesome. We can go down the row.
I don't think I have anything to add to that, so I'll just.
I would say start training the resistance now. If you know a skill that is valuable, whatever that may be, it might be grant writing, advocacy, lobbying, like how to fundraise, how to do anything like that. Start teaching the lady next to you, the lady in the next cubicle, the younger generation. We need to start organizing our communities now. We have a long battle in the next few years ahead of us.
Yeah, I think for me, the reason why I wanted to be a legislator is I wanted to stop working on reentry and helping women when they get out and go upstream and actually make sure that every young girl has a good first chance at life and isn't born in the ways that I was born into, because the adverse childhood experiences ACE score of 10 has led to significant trauma that I am still battling to this day. Even though outside, I have this professional life, it's great, I still have the dysregulation. And so for me, I really wish that our communities were more connected. I wish neighbors trusted each other. And so I do these things. I go knock on my neighbors' doors and get to know them, talk to them. I take the time. I also really believe in restorative justice and not canceling people or hurting people. When I have conflict with people, even my own leadership in the legislature, I ask for mediated conversations to restore and communicate, because it is such a hard world. And if we gave every young girl, though, a good first chance at life, we would start to see the change that we need.
I love that. And I just want to see women being informed to make their own decisions. And I always tell people the Women's Commission is nonpartisan. I don't have to support the choice that you make, but I want you to be able to make it and have all the information that you need to make it. So in the next 3 to 5 years, I hope that we do train up the younger generation. I have a child who's Generation Alpha and something else. So I know they're going to change the world if only given the opportunity, and I hope we can all help them do so. And then for the last question, I want to hear from the panel. What's one resource for further learning for the crowd today, and what's one action step? Because it's all great to talk about things and to read about things, but we need action.
Want me to start?
Yeah.
I was thinking about this, and I just, wanted to share. I've shared a lot today, and I share that on purpose because I want people to understand, like my dog Hope, this is actually a PTSD service animal, and I wanted to share the psilocybin handbook for women because I went through psilocybin treatment this year for PTSD stemming from ACEs and throughout all the violence I've experienced my whole life, and I really feel like the benefit of it was getting like 2 decades of therapy in 2 days. And so I went to Oregon and worked with a shaman and all that, and it was amazing. So there's this, let me tell you the author, and I got into it because of her. Her name is, Jessica Chesek, and it's the Psilocybin Handbook for Women. I think just be open-minded. You might be able to share it with someone else. And then I want to say the action step I want to ask all of you, if you haven't visited the women's prison in Gig Harbor, I invite you to come with me sometime. We also have a new program that's starting called the Frederick Douglass Project out of Washington, D.C., which is going to bring people from the tech sector and from all different sectors or, business women, just people who've never been to a prison. We're going to start bringing people into the women's prison so you can see it firsthand and get to know one of the most marginalized populations in our community because they are there. A lot of people forget about them.
I think I'm going to parrot one of our earlier panelists said, the League of Women Voters. I just love all the resources that they have available. And I think as an action step for our communities, there's going to be a need for community building in the future, or now and in the future. But knowing, especially as people that work in nonprofits or anything like that, knowing who your tribal partners are in your region, they are battling a bigger fight than we can even imagine, but also they have different resources than we can imagine. So by making them a partner, they've been fighting the resistance for a really long time anyways, because it's funny because when I'm in a non-Native community, everybody is so upset and appalled about what the government is doing. But when I'm in Native community, they're like, oh, this is a Tuesday. So
That's kind of sad.
yeah. So that means they're the greatest partners. So see how far we can provide those resources together. It goes a lot farther.
So the ACLU of Washington has a great website. The ACLU National has a great website. Pretty soon we'll have our legislative agenda, the big policies we think that will help shore up protections here, particularly in the face of this administration. So really invite you all to check that resource out. And then just something recent that I'm really wanting to push is it's going to be really important that our local media stay strong. And so find the local media in your community and support them. In Seattle, I love Real Change. I love South Seattle Emerald. Make sure that the media that you trust is actually going to be here throughout this administration. So go support them and make sure that you're paying for that access.
So many great actions to take. I wanted to share, how many of you have heard of Valerie Carr? Anybody in the crowd? A few people? She is a Sikh activist, filmmaker, civil rights lawyer, and she really builds movements for change. And I recently had an opportunity to see her speak in person. And so one of the statements that I came across that describes her is that she declares revolutionary love is the call of our times, a radical, joyful practice that extends in three directions: to others, to our opponents, and to ourselves. It enjoins us to see no stranger, but instead look at others and say, "You are a part of me I do not yet know." So that is my action to all of you, to see each other, to see that's just a part of you that you don't know yet, and walk right up to yourself and say hello.
I love that. Well, I will make one last plug. Here at the Women's Commission, we do have a new website that will track legislation and hot topics at the national and state level. We also are launching a resource center that on October 10th, we'll have about 400 resources for women, geared towards women, in different topics like health and housing. That will look at like statewide resources, federal resources, and local resources, and we'll continue to build that. And for my action item, I would just ask all of you to continue to resist. I know times are hard. You're exhausted. I'm exhausted as well, but now is not the time to give up. Now it's time to fight. Thank you.